guys, and welcome back to my channel. You already know the vibes. If you're new, drop a comment down below and let me know where you're coming from. If you're a returning sub, then I see you, and welcome back to another episode of Food with Chanell. Today we are going to be making slow roasted lamb ribs. This recipe is actually in my new cookbook, Food with Chanell, Making Meals Magical. If you don't have a copy already, then of course I will put the link in the description below and you can go and get one. But this is one of the recipes that's in the book. I love it, and as much as it's slow roasted, it's minimal prep. That's why it just, yeah, it's just a great recipe, but it has maximum flavour. So this is already seasoned up already because I wanted to leave it overnight. If you do have my book, you may look at this and say it's slightly different. Like in my book it says use spring onions, I used regular onions this time, but it doesn't matter, you just kind of go with the vibe. So we're basically going to slow roast these in the oven and then glaze them with a mint honey glaze, and it just makes them sticky, tender and delicious. Make sure you subscribe and follow me on all my socials, Chanell A. Wallace on TikTok and Snapchat, and Food with Chanell on Pinterest, Facebook, YouTube and Instagram. So let's get straight into it and make some slow roasted mint lamb ribs. If you want the full ingredients list, then you will need to purchase my book, Food with Chanell, Making Meals Magical. There is a hard copy version and a digital version, which is slightly cheaper. So please, if you can, support and get my new book. Love you. Mwah. This recipe is very simple. It's one of those recipes you could do whilst you're at home for the day, and you can just let them slow roast. So if you look, these are already seasoned. It's got a mixture of mint, lamb seasoning. Leave it overnight for maximum flavour. And then we're going to bake them for 30 minutes at like 150, 160. Yeah, in between that for 30 minutes. And then after that, we're going to add some boiling water to the base of the pan, and we're going to cover it with foil. That's just going to allow it to slowly get tender and release some juices. Then later on we're going to turn back up the heat, glaze it with some honey and mint sauce, and that's when it's going to get nice and sticky. And as I also said, I use normal onions. In the recipe in my book I use spring onions, but you know, just making sure you've got any onion in there is great, to be honest. This recipe is like double the ingredients because I've actually used 13, double-ish. And then in here we've got all the seasonings, so like the thyme, the onions, the peppers, the onions and the tomatoes. I'm just going to kind of dot them around because these are going to get soft and eventually caramelize, but because we're cooking them so low they won't burn or anything, they'll just get nice and soft. So I'm just going to dot this around the ribs, and then that is it. You got to put these in a preheated oven, let's say 155 to 160. Put it in there for 30 minutes and then we're going to come back and do the next step. So for now, in the oven at 150 to 160 for 30 minutes. As you can see, our lamb has been in for about 30 minutes. It's got some nice juices at the bottom of the pan. So if you see that, you see all those juices in the bottom. And now it's time to just add some water to the base of this, and then we're going to cover it with foil and cook it at the same temp for 2.5 hours. I know that sounds like a long time, but you basically want everything to get nice and soft and tender. I've got the same dish that I seasoned up the ribs in. Put some water in this to just take out the remaining marinade, and let's say that's about 1.5 cups. in there. And then pour this on the base. Don't pour it over the ribs. So just like around the ribs. And it shouldn't really cover them. It should just come maybe just under halfway, but not fully. And the reason why we do this is because, like I said, it slow cooks it. It doesn't dry out, doesn't burn, and yeah, you'll see kind of how that develops over time. But then you cover it with foil, put it back in the oven at the same temp. So I've got mine on 155 for another 2.5 hours. So it's already been in for 30 minutes. Do 2 hours and 30 minutes more, and then we're going to come back. But check on them every half an hour. You know, you can give them a flip. So I'm going to come back to these in probably like an hour actually, and I'll show you what they look like. So let's see how these are looking. So you see how it's still got the stock in the bottom? That's basically what we want, because it's still got another hour and a half to go. And we still want them to get nice and tender. Yeah, it can still get more tender than this. It might not be another hour and a half, maybe like another hour. But we're just going to flip these over and then cover them and put them back in. But you see how they've already started to, you know, get nice and juicy. So I'm going to cover this back. And then leave it in there again for another hour. Okay, so it's been another hour. How our ribs are doing. Okay, so, oh, these are nice and tender now. Look at how tender these are. If I lift it up too much, it's going to fall off the bone. Look, you see that? This is what we want. So I'm actually going to leave it with the foil off now, because we don't want them to get too soft. Look at that. It's literally pulling apart, but that's what we want. We want them to be nice and soft. So now we're going to make the glaze, which is going to go over these to make them nice and sticky. Normally, some of this like juice would have gone, but a lot of it is fat as well. So I'm going to drain off some of the fat from this and make the glaze. Okay, you'll know which part the fat is, because when you tilt it, there will just be like a layer of oil like that. It doesn't matter if you get some of those lamb juices in there, because it will be hard to get practically all of the fat out without removing some of those lamb juices as well. But just take out majority of that fat that's on the top. And this fat can actually be used for like crispy potatoes, because this will solidify, so it can be, like I said, added to your roast potatoes to get them crispier. I've removed, I've removed the majority out of it, and now I'm gonna make the glaze. For the glaze, I've got honey and mint sauce. I'm going to add to this 1 tablespoon of mint sauce and a half, and then 1.5 tablespoons of honey. Mix that up until it looks like that, and that is your glaze basically. So when we pour this on, of course we're going to brush it over a bit and it will mix with the stock that's left over. It will take a little while to get sticky, so we're going to turn up the heat to like 180 and keep it on for maybe about 30 minutes, but we'll check on it halfway, keep brushing it and so on. But that's the key when you've put the glaze on. You just want to turn up the heat so it can get sticky, and all this will render down into a nice glaze on that lamb. So just drizzle all of this onto the ribs. And don't worry if it goes in this, like I said, that's going to render down and all those flavours are going to work together anyway, because you will flip these as well. Just get a brush and brush that glaze all over the ribs. And then of course some of it's gone into that stock as well, so we will flip them over and do the same. If I need to make some more, then I'll add a bit of honey into that bowl again. Look, that one's got a lot on there, so you just distribute it over it and just brush it with some of that stock as well so it can stay juicy. And then we're going to put this back into the oven for about 30 minutes, but we're going to check on it halfway. Turn up the heat to 185. I can't even remember the temp it says in my book, but basically you want to get it higher, so we're going to put this on 185 and check on it in 15 minutes. Now our ribs are ready. Look at that. Nice and juicy and succulent. I'm just going to flip them over again. Look, the meat is just falling off of the bone, literally falling off the bone, so I've got to be very careful. Look. And these, the flavour on these goes crazy. Let me pick one up. Look at that there. I'm going to try and pick one up. But when I tell you it's tender, it's very tender. Look at that. Delicious. When I say they're tender, I mean they are tender. Some of them I've had to be really careful when picking them up because they're just gonna fall off of the bone. And that glaze on there, and that glaze on there. Now you could serve these on some mashed potatoes. That would personally be my go-to. But look at that. Look at the meat just falling off of the bone. Just look at that there, where it's just glazed and a little piece of that lamb came off there. That piece is literally hanging apart. That's how tender it is. Like this one as well. But you know what, when it's nice and tender, that means it's going to be enjoyable because it's not chewy. That bit there. Then the final piece, that little bite, onion and all that stuff. I'm going to put this on the top because that's all flavour as well. Put that right over the top there, like so. Slow cooked mint lamb ribs. Let's take a look at that. Look at how tender and delicious they are. Now we're definitely going to give this a taste test. Look at those bad boys. Oh my gosh. And then if I just pick up one of these ribs to show you how tender they are. The glaze, everything, and because it is so like tender, it's going to be hard to do, but let's see. This is what I'm telling you about tender. Look at that. If you want to make this, you've got to make this. Of course, the ingredients is in my new cookbook, Food with Chanell, along with many other recipes. This is a good Thanksgiving recipe because, yeah, just look at those. Tender, fall off the bone, you can't go wrong. Soul food, tasty, makes the heart and the stomach feel happy. That's what you want. Please, if you can, support and get my new cookbook, Food with Chanell. The full, in-depth, step-by-step tutorial is in that. The link to my book will be in the description down below as well. Make sure you're subscribed, click that notification bell so that you can see anytime I'm about to post a new delicious recipe. And yeah, make sure you're following me on all my socials, Chanell A. Wallace on TikTok and Snapchat, and Food with Chanell on everything else, Instagram, YouTube, Facebook and Pinterest. See you in the next video.